love to hike, and I'm always looking for new trails and undiscovered areas to discover. This time, in the middle of the wilderness, I found a treasure. Away from the hustle and bustle of daily life, the trail promised breathtaking views. It was too tempting for me to resist. I loaded my backpack with the necessities on a bright Saturday morning, including a water bottle, snacks, a map, and my dependable Swiss Army knife. I made sure everything was accurate before setting out to face the uncharted. A wooden sign that had been exposed to the elements for a long time marked the trail's beginning. Wildwood Trail, adventure awaits, it declared. I stepped onto the path, surrounded by soaring trees and the sweet scent of pine, and excitement filled my veins. The hike began without incident. The path wound its way through a thick forest where the sunlight peeked through the trees to create beautiful patterns on the ground. A soft breeze ruffled the leaves as birds chirped sweetly. It was utter tranquility. The trail narrowed as I traveled further into the wilderness, and I could feel the underbrush grabbing at my legs. I continued on, determined to get to the trail's end in the rumored panoramic vista. After a while, the sun started to set. The forest became darker, with ominous lengthening shadows. I abruptly became aware of a strange rustling sound coming from behind me. I turned around as my senses went on high alert as my heart skipped a beat. But nothing was there. There were only the trees, gently swaying in the wind. I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me and continued to move forward. At that point, I noticed large, scuffed boot prints on the path. They appeared to have been recently walked upon because of how clean they were. I felt terrified. Who else could be here in this remote area? With my heart racing, I quickened my pace. The once inviting embrace of the forest seemed to close in around me, suffocating me. I jumped at every sound the wind made, including twig crackles and wind whispers. Then I noticed it. A tiny clearing ahead was glowing ethereally. As I entered the open area, a wave of relief swept over me. My joy, however, was fleeting. A dilapidated cabin was located in the middle of the clearing. Its windows were broken, and the walls' weathered frames leaned precariously. It had the appearance of something from a scary film. I made a cautious approach, my feet crunching through the leaves as I went. An interior that was dark was revealed when the door creaked open with an eerie sound. There was a sense of dread in the air. In spite of myself, I gave into my curiosity. I cautiously opened the door and peered into the cabin's void. My blood froze when I saw what I did. A group of tarnished photos were there, scattered across a dusty table. Each one showed a hiker with a smile on their face, seemingly frozen in time. But as I looked at the images, I had a sickening realization. They were all women, the same as me, hiking women. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I did so, tipping over a chair. A low, guttural growl that sounded like it was coming from the walls shattered the silence. I fled the cabin and back into the oppressive embrace of the forest when panic took hold. Branch scratches at my skin as I ran down the trail appeared to be an attempt by them to slow me down. The forest had turned on me and had become a terrifying maze. With each passing second, I could hear footsteps echoing behind me. I refrained from turning around. I ran as if my life depended on it because I was terrified of turning into another photograph. Unknown in its motives, the ominous presence pursued me frantically. Each breath was a struggle as I ran through the forest with my heart racing. A constant reminder of the danger behind me was the killer hiking woman's relentless pursuit. Every action was governed by fear, which compelled me to go beyond my comfort zone. The grotesque shapes that the forest shadows assumed made menacing whispers in my ears. I resisted being slowed down by the thick vegetation as my clothes were clawed at by it. And my determination was powered by adrenaline. I abruptly came across a downed tree with decomposing branches blocking the way in front of me. There was no time to waste. I jumped over the obstruction with an outburst of strength, stumbling on the other side, but quickly regaining my balance. The footsteps in pursuit got louder and closer. I slowly looked behind me and saw a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes gleaming with an unholy light. I was shaken by the sight, but I couldn't afford to be overcome by fear. The familiar trail had turned into a confusing maze as I ran through the underbrush. Although I was in danger of succumbing to panic, I forced myself to keep thinking about how to live while working my legs as hard as I could. My thoughts were frantically searching for a strategy and a way out as I sped forward. I then recalled a narrow but potentially life-saving path that led into a nearby ravine. I knew it was a risk, but I had no other option. In a fit of desperation, I abruptly left the trail and raced through the vegetation in the direction of the ravine. With each step, the terrain became more hazardous as the ground beneath me grew uneven. My body hurt and my legs were burning, but the adrenaline gave me the will to keep going. When I got to the ravine's edge, the yawning chasm beckoned to me to jump into it. Without thinking, I jumped into the abyss, sending my body hurtling through the air before tumbling into the pitch-black ground below. I ignored the pain that shot through my limbs from the impact as I stumbled to my feet, just as the murder of the hiking woman caught my attention. They were standing at the edge of the ravine, their face etched with rage. They briefly fixed their piercing gaze on me, and I noticed that their eyes were twisted with rage and disappointment. It appeared to be a prize they had been looking forward to losing. I couldn't, however, think about that right now. In order to put myself as far away from the psychotic killer as I could, I had to flee. I limped off, my body grumbling with each step, but the will to live propelled me on. As I pushed through the underbrush, the darkness encircling me seemed to swallow me whole. With the fear still fresh in my mind, I jumped at every rustle and every twig snap. Hours went by, and I was on the verge of exhaustion. I eventually made my way out of the confusing forest, stumbling onto a lonely road. I hoarsely waved down the first passing car and begged for assistance. I told the authorities my terrifying story after the kind stranger drove me to the closest town. They promised to look into it, track down the murder of the hiking woman, and prosecute the offenders. But I'm aware, deep down, that the terror is not yet over. The chilling memory of those images from the abandoned cabin lingers, serving as a chilling reminder that the killer who stalked the hiking woman is still out there, hunting for their next victim. Fishing has always been my passion. Sitting by the water while you wait for a tug on the line to signal a catch. There's something peaceful about that. I use it as a means of escape from the daily craziness, but I had no idea one fateful fishing trip would alter everything. I prepared my fishing equipment and left for the preferred location, a remote lake hidden deep within the forest. On a crisp autumn morning, a beautiful backdrop for my fishing adventure was provided by the leaves, which had already begun to turn vibrant shades of red and gold. As I approached the lake, I became aware of an oddity. There was an unsettling silence in the air, and the usually calm water had an eerie stillness to it. I set up my fishing rod and cast my line into the water against my instincts, hoping for a good bite. My patience grew slack as the hours went by. A sudden tug on the line interrupted me as I was about to give up for the day. I felt a rush of excitement as I reeled in my catch, but when I saw what I had caught, my joy quickly turned to horror. Bloodied and mangled, it was a severed human hand. My heart was racing as I stumbled backward and dropped the fishing rod. I panicked as I became aware of how serious the situation was. I had unknowingly witnessed a terrible crime, and someone had met a grisly end in these very waters. With each passing second, I felt more and more as though I was being watched, so I hastily gathered my belongings. Every rustle in the bushes and every far-off sound appeared to be a danger as I made my way back to the car. The forest that had once provided me with comfort now seemed like a dangerous trap. I struggled to get to my car while holding the keys in my shaking hands. I saw a terrifying message scrawled on the driver's side window in what appeared to be blood just as I was about to start the engine. "You're next," it simply said. I looked around into the shadows, but there was no one there. My chest pounded. I sped away from the lake as my mind raced with questions as fear overcame me. The most crucial questions were whether I would be able to escape the grasp of the fishing killer, who they were, and what they wanted from me. As I sped away from the haunted lake, my mind was a whirlwind of anxiety and paranoia. Each syllable of "you're next" echoed in my mind, sending chills up and down my spine. Since I had no evidence other than my grisly find in the eerie message on my car, I knew I couldn't call the police just yet. The next few days were spent having sleepless nights and being constantly aware of my surroundings. I jumped at the slightest noise because it seemed like every shadow could be hiding a danger. The fishing killer had marked me, and I couldn't get rid of the feeling that they were keeping an eye on everything I did. I began my own investigation, determined to learn the truth and safeguard myself. I searched the local news archives for any unsolved murders or disappearances that might be associated with the severed hand I had found. There were a few missing persons cases, but none of them exactly matched my gruesome discovery. In the course of my investigation, I came across a long-forgotten fishing community outside of the city that had long since been abandoned due to environmental contamination. There were rumors going around about strange events and sinister things that were hidden beneath the murky waters of the nearby river. A killer could easily conceal themselves there, it seemed. I stepped into the eerie village after taking a deep breath, my footsteps resonating through the deserted streets. On either side, decaying homes loomed, their doors creaking and windows shattered. The air was oppressive, as if there were an evil presence permeating the entire village. As a source of the contamination that had driven everyone away, I made my way to the riverbank. A flash of silver beneath the water's surface caught my attention. As I peered into the murky, turbulent waters, I reached in without thinking and quickly encircled a bloody fishing lure with my hand. I felt a shiver run down my spine as a chilling voice whispered behind me, "You ought not to have come here." I turned to face the shadowy figure of the fishing killer. Their eyes sparkled with a sadistic appetite and a perverted joy derived from the suffering of others. The true horror of what I had discovered hit me at that precise moment. My heart was thumping in my chest as I ran away from the riverbank, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. As they closed in on me, the fishing killer gave chase. In an attempt to find a way out, I zigzagged through the deserted streets. Just when I gave up hope, I noticed an old, rickety fishing boat moored at the edge of the community. My hands trembled with a mix of fear and resolve as I untied the rope and launched myself into the water. I rowed as hard as I could as the fishing killer lunged toward me, their fingers just missing my shoulder. The fishing killer's agonized screams vanished into the night as I increased my distance from the haunted village. Although I had managed to escape their grasp, the atrocities I had seen would never leave me. I still ponder where the fishing killer is waiting for their next victim. As I tell my story today, I've learned to be careful, always look over my shoulder, and stay away from remote fishing spots. The same waters that once brought me solace now serve as a warning about the unspeakable evil that may be lurking beneath the surface.